Hello, good evening. I hope all of y'all can hear me. I am Pramesh Chandan, CEO of Malaysia Kini, and welcome to Top in Tech. And today we're talking about what is the new way of working, or the new wow. So really today we're having a great discussion with Karamjit and three speakers. The question is, how have you changed your way of working to adapt to the culture and technology of remote working tools and work, and how do we increase productivity to deliver results? We all believe that productivity levels have a direct link to the capability and capacity of collaborative tools and the readiness of individuals to adopt current technology. Businesses are encouraged to look into investment in effective communication platforms to better adopt new technologies, and also consider extending some form of assistance, tangible or intangible, to the employees to help with these changes. So today in Top in Tech, the new way of working is brought to you by KPMG Malaysia. Thank you very much for your support. And today we'll be able to discuss and share some perspectives and insights on the issues and what are the best practices of remote working and the value and the rise of the dependency of technology for everyone. Today we have Sharmini Ann Jacob, Executive Director of People and Advisory at KPMG Malaysia. We also have Sequerah, Managing Partner of ScaleUp Malaysia, as well as Rohan, Krishnalingam Group, Chief Operating Officer of RHB Banking Group. And over to you, our moderator of the day, Karamjit Singh, CEO of Digital News Asia.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. I think both KPMG and RHB did a survey of their colleagues and staff on what were the issues they're facing with work from home, and a small handful said there were technical issues. And this is the seventh webinar I'm doing, and for the first time I'm facing technical issues. So if you hear me being choppy, or you hear my voice dropping or my video dropping, please apologize. My so-called 500 max is definitely letting me down big time at the moment. But so, okay, it's kind of interesting. It's the new way of working. Everybody has been reading about this, right? And you're watching the videos and everything that's going on. People are sharing in WhatsApp groups also. I've got, my childhood friends and talking about the experience of working from home. Surprisingly, the majority is very positive, but there's some issues with, of course, we will absolutely professionally own organization, right? What they're doing as knowledge workers, and they're advising many companies out there how to get a handle on the new way of working. And it's important because all of us need to be so much more productive now, right? So it's going to be interesting to hear from Sharmini and Rohan with RHB. I think they've got about 13,000 employees, and they did a survey of how the employees are handling this working from home. And there's some very fresh, relevant data from data points he's going to share. And then Andre's going to come in as the geek here, talking about some of the technology challenges also. And I'm going to listen very carefully to what he says so I can make sure that I don't have problems with my Unify in the future, 500 meg or whatever. But with that now, we'll get started with Sharmini first. Really interested to hear what perspective she has to share. Yeah.
Thanks, Karam. Thank you for having me, and I hope everyone can hear me well. Before we start my session, what I would like to ask the audience is, of the four below, which is the most important in making work from home a success within your organization? For those of you that are on this big marker, you can respond to the poll. And I understand we're showing this live on Facebook as well. You should be able to answer it there. All right. So let's get started. So in KPMG, we recently had a public poll, and we got about 3,000 respondents across Malaysia from various income groups as well as various age groups. And as you can see, and as I mentioned, across Malaysia. And the top three contributors to a decrease in productivity over this whole work from home has been network issues, communication barriers, and technology readiness. Now, obviously, there were a few other contributors, but these were the three main contributors. And the solutions at the end of the day for these seem to be fairly straightforward, whilst it may be slightly expensive in certain quarters, but it is doable. So at the end of the day, this whole work from home concept is something that can continue post-COVID. We don't have to stop just because we found a cure for COVID at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
We can continue work from home. So the question then is, do organizations want to do it or not? Now, Karam, you said something?
Yeah, no, I say absolutely, because even after COVID is over, absolutely this is going to be the way, right? And there seems to be an age difference also, I think, and it'll be interesting to hear from you and Rohan first on the people who strongly believe that versus first who would like it to be a balance. But carry on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So within KPMG, as well as what some of our clients have done, is the interesting fact is 84% of people have actually said they are as productive or in fact even more productive when they work from home. And what KPMG has done is to answer the three concerns that came up, or the three barriers, as I mentioned earlier, the network issues, communications, and technology part. We've started doing virtual meetings via the platform that we use here in KPMG. We do collaboration. We have a lot of collaboration tools that have already been set up because of the nature of our job. We've done a lot of online training and onboarding, not just for current employees, but also for the new employees that have come in. We actually continued with our hiring during the MCO, CMCO, and now in RMCO. We still are continuing with our hiring, and then we've also increased our VPN bandwidth to cater for all of this so that we don't have network issues as much as possible. And obviously, the last part is we've enabled cloud storage, which means you don't have to come back to office to get certain files, or you don't have to log on to the office network to make sure that your work is being done. Everything's on cloud at this point. And similarly, our clients have also done the same thing, 15-minute calls to get updates on every day. They just 15 minutes, how are you doing? What is the status? Do you have any problems? Rotations coming in, coming out, so that people still feel that they belong to a certain organization. Again, there's this whole collaboration tools being used. VPN is again something that is high on everyone's priority. This is mainly for security. And then last but not least is this whole agile and flexible working style. Okay, so that is what has been happening from both KPMG's point as well as some of our clients. And the key for making all of this work is our HR. Okay, in KPMG, they're known as PPC, which is People, Performance, and Culture. And so they have played a big part in making all of us comfortable with this new way of working. Okay, let me talk a little bit more about HR there. There are two main things that HR needs to do. Number one, they need to make sure that our policies and procedures are updated. Our SOPs as far as safety, as far as health and all that is updated. Just because we're working from home, we cannot run away from all these safety things that we have. The second part is making sure our people, from a training point of view, as well as just being comfortable with doing things the way we are supposed to do now. Making sure we're still connected, making sure we still feel that we belong to the organization that we've signed up for.
Interesting.
Okay? So that's where HR comes in. So now the last slide I have, since I was only given 5 minutes for my introduction, the last slide I have is on this whole, the question I asked, so which is the most important? Trust, KPIs, HR, or getting one size, the culture part? Now the answer, if I look at the polls, for those of you that answered any one of these, your answers are actually all correct. Okay. All four of these things are actually important in making your work from home a success. Okay. Number one is there must be trust. If you do not trust your people, and if your people do not trust you as leaders within your organization, this whole remote working is not going to work. Because I need to trust my people that they will do their work, and my people need to trust me that I will also be there to continue supporting them. Number two, there needs to be clear accountability. So KPIs, performance matrix, clear tasks and activities that need to be completed, and everyone needs to know it. It's no point me knowing what your KPI is, but you not knowing what your KPI is, right?
Very true.
HR as a key enabler, I spoke a little bit about that as well. So not just in hand-holding us, but also in making sure our policies and procedures are up to date as well, right? And the last one, but definitely not the least one, is one size does not fit all. Just because the Googles and the Yahoos of the world have done it this way, that doesn't mean it's going to work in your organization. You need to look and see what is working in your organization, how you're currently doing things, and then say, okay, for the whole WFH to work for me, this is what my organization needs to do. And you need to, again, look at it from two angles, as an organization and the people you have in your organization. All right? Okay. So that's all I have for now. I am more than happy to take question and answers, not now, but later on.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sharmini. It's interesting that you had a poll that was done of 3,000 people. And I'm just kind of curious if any of the audience want to get access and they want to have that poll. Is that was issued? I think you actually issued a press release, right, on the key findings of the poll, correct?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And if there's actually this QR code that is showing now, if you just scan the QR code, you can actually download the complete report as well.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Okay. So I urge all of you who want to, download the report.
Okay.
I think it'll be very useful. And now about the experience of a rules regulatory bound organization, how they've coped with this new environment. Rohan, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Karamjit, and thank you, Sharmini. That was very insightful.
No problem.
Just picking off where Sharmini shared the experience from KPMG, I'll just share a little bit of experience, in terms of what we went through at RHB. So as Karamjit mentioned, actually we are an organization of about 14,500. And this was work from home before MCO. So we had basically two programs, one called flexible work arrangement and telecommuting. So flexible work arrangement allows you to come in a bit earlier, leave a bit earlier, or come in a bit later and leave a bit later. And we had 320 employees out of our 14,500 on that. We also had telecommuting, and we had only 10 people on this program. But suddenly on 18th of March, it suddenly was, we really had to, MCO was announced and we had to work from home. And suddenly we went from 10 employees working from home to 9,000 over people working from home.
Wow.
And the reason it was not 30,500 is because banking is considered essential services. Yeah. So we needed some more people to still work at the branches, keep the branches open and so on. But, we suddenly went from 10 people to 9,000 over people. So, a huge jump in terms of people working from home, right? And as you can imagine, there's a lot of challenges trying to do that in an organization the size of ours.
Absolutely.
But somehow or other, Karamjit, we managed to do it. And I'll explain some of the technology challenges later.
Yeah.
But let me just share a little bit of data in terms of the survey we did. So this was the survey we did with our staff, and this data is a little bit skewed because this is really my department, and my department's mainly digital and tech workers, right? But if you look at it, 96% sample size is about 166 out of my 500 odd staff, so it's about 1/3. But 96% of the employees really would recommend work from home, right? And that's the overall headline statistic. We found, at least for me, we were able to, develop software. We were able to run our systems remotely. We were able to handle customer service remotely. And if you look at the, the right-hand side of the chart, in terms of, some of the questions we asked, was the expectation realistic, and were they able to achieve it? 93% of them said yes, they were able to do what they needed to do. When we asked them, do you have sufficient equipment and tools? It's a bit lower. 86% said yes. Again, there's some challenges here which I will share. When we asked them, did you see an increase of productivity? And interestingly, 86% of people said yes. When I started probing around why, some people told me, look, I don't spend 1 hour coming to the office in the morning and 1.5 hours working, going back home. So I really save 2.5 hours every day, in KL traffic, right? And typically, some of the comments you'll see in the next slide, they don't get, interrupted by calls or meetings. So they found productivity actually went up. They were able to do, so 94% have said, I can do my work effectively. The one thing that was a little lower was working relationship. So many felt that they were not getting that interaction with their colleagues, from working at home. So that was something that was slightly lower. And 90% of them loved the flexibility, to be able to work from home. Engagement was also good. And the supervisors were supportive. So 95% of the people said their supervisors were supportive. So
that is very important.
Absolutely, Karamjit. If you look at this data, it's generally very positive, right? And so as an organization, we have decided, even though most of us are back at the office, we are going to implement at least 25% of our workforce work from home moving forward, even after MCO.
Okay.
Right? Because the feedback has been very good. The one challenge I guess we had as a management team was, how do we track productivity, right?
Absolutely.
And of course, we have a different set of workers, from tellers to business people to tech workers. So we also have different types of people who work differently. And back to what Sharmini was mentioning, one size doesn't fit all. So this again, just to summarize, what were some of the positives? Most of our employees felt that expectations were realistic, achievable. There were no adverse effects, and they had supervisors that strongly supported their work from home. But some of the areas of concern was provision of remote working tools. So again, I think the productivity is very much linked to how well you can, how well your technology is set up, right? Do you have PCs? Do you have VPNs? Do you have virtual conference tools? I think the other one that I mentioned was, their interaction with their colleagues. So that was probably the only downside we saw. They were not able to engage with their colleagues well enough. So you'll see some comments at the bottom of the page. I can manage my time better and more flexible. I can balance my lifestyle as a working mother. So working mothers really enjoyed it. I think, even for me, I got to see my kids most of the day, so it was great.
Fantastic.
And they're about to go off to the university, so
precious time.
Yeah, precious time. Yeah. And people said they don't get interrupted by calls. But on the downside, I think the main thing is improve the VPN connection. They were not able to. There were some people that were saying, you need to respect my working hours, official working hours, because sometimes they'd have meetings at calls late at night. So that is also one key feedback. I just want to end on the tech challenges, right? I'm sure Andre will talk about this. But some of these were some of the technology challenges that I faced, and I'm sure many of the organizations. So I mentioned we only had something like 10 people working from home, and suddenly we had to go to 9,000 over. So the first thing we had to do is we had to really do all our meetings online, right? And so we were trying to. We were using Cisco WebEx, but we didn't. We really couldn't scale that. So we looked at Zoom, we looked at Microsoft Teams, and Karamjit, you might remember there was this Zoom bombing articles right going on. Yeah,
correct. Yes.
So we had to do a very, very deep security review on Zoom because as a bank we needed to make sure our meetings were secure.
Yeah.
And we had to do that literally in days, right? I mean, typically it would have been done in months. So we decided to go with Zoom and Microsoft Teams. But it was great because while we were evaluating Zoom, we already found that 3,000 of our staff were already using Zoom, right?
Wow.
So you can't stop this, right? If you're running a big organization, and people use Google Meet and so on. So we really needed to establish a secure version of Zoom, which is what we did. The second challenge I just quickly want to highlight is, BCM strategies, right? You have a business continuity plan, and you suddenly realize, it has to be rewritten in a day, matter of days. It doesn't quite work, right? Because BCP strategy says you go to an alternate site, but if your alternate site has 3,000 people and somebody gets coronavirus in that site, it doesn't quite work, right?
Absolutely.
So we very quickly, had to even say we have to go to multiple sites, work from home. So all that had to be done. Everybody wanted a laptop. So we had about our ratio of laptop to desktop was about 20% to desktops. We had to, and of course the supply chains were disrupted, right? Because of, so there was a challenge. And after they got the laptops, they wanted VPNs to connect. Yeah. So huge challenge trying to provide all this infrastructure. So we had to really prioritize, who really got this. And then finally, cyber risk, right? So again, we took a decision not to allow our staff to use their personal devices, PCs. And
interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because you actually increase your risk, right? Because you don't know, the employees, whether they are going through secure networks, whether they are ransomware on their PC. So, so we had to take that hard decision, and we actually said, look, use the bank supplied laptop or mobile device to get access. But
I think it makes sense as a bank, Rohan. It makes sense, and I'm sure Bank Negara. I'm surprised if they haven't already come up with a ruling to say that for work from home, all banks must supply their own authenticated supplied tools, right, for staff.
Yeah. They didn't, Karam, but generally all the banks do practice that. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, I think it's been an interesting journey, and it's once in a lifetime. But I think work from home can really work. So with that, Karam, back to you.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot, Rohan. Very interesting, and some real data points being shared there. We will, and I think the fact that it was interesting that you put out the percentage of employees who really like this arrangement is over 90%. And I'm wondering whether there's an age issue. So you see, like staff above 40, and even for Sharmini, so staff above 40 probably is 98% that they appreciate the work from home. And staff below 30, maybe, they want to do half, or they prefer to come into the office, because you're working in a prestigious organization like KPMG and RHB, and you don't want to be at home, right? You want to be out there, staying there, going into a nice building. There's a prestige factor also there. But we can talk about that later in the Q&A also. Andre's waiting. He's got his video on. So Andre, I'll let you take charge of the screen, not the floor.
Thanks a lot, Karamjit. Good evening, everyone, and thanks, Rohan, and thanks, Sharmini. We were all talking about the new way of working, and I suppose from a tech perspective, the question is it really? What has happened is that over the years, I think it has been called many things: telecommuting, remote work, flexible working arrangements. But really, it's taken this pandemic really to push through something that in the technology world actually has been on the sidelines of working and business life. And only with the pandemic, it is now accepted as a norm. So if you look at the interesting global surveys, telecommuting actually has been on a global uptrend for many years. In 2018, for example, IWG, which is the company that used to be called Regis, they surveyed like 18,000 business professionals globally across 96 international companies, and they produced a report called The State of Remote Work in 2018. And they found that amongst the professionals, at least 70% of professionals globally were actually working full-time remote workers. Right, we at least half, 53% of those working at home at least half a week. Those are big numbers. Yeah. Yep. And there was another survey done by a job site called Flex Jobs. Knowingly they're actually a job site dedicated for flexible working jobs, and they found that in the US at least, remote working actually increased from 2005 to 2017 by 159%. All right, so that is really the kind of surveys there. Sorry, this poll is supposed to be a bit later, so we can do it later. Yeah. But my point about tech was that what has really brought us to this juncture, and how is it that, for example, Rohan was saying that in a matter of days he had managed to move 10 remote workers to 9 over 1,000 remote workers. Now, how did that
crazy, man? Yeah. I think the Americans have a saying, when something drastic like that happened, they say you literally spun on a coin.
Yes, exactly. But if spun on a coin in this terms, considering today's world, is actually, it took decades to happen. And if you look at my slide here, actually, there are many technologies at play, to actually bring all of this ability to work remotely, to the fore. If you look at the 70s, we wouldn't be able to work so easily if we didn't have this graphical type user interface, right? And that was born in the 70s. That is what, 50 years ago, right?
Yep.
And in the 80s, Microsoft popularized their Microsoft Office, the Windows system, and PCs became something which was, it started at that time and it became really popular. And then came laptops, right? In the 90s, we were talking about broadband, and I don't know how many of you still remember the 9.6 kilobits per second modems that used to annoy us with their sound. But all of that and in the internet itself was born in the 90s, right? It came out of research projects in the US, okay? But what really, from a business perspective, what happened is that it also took it took the office out of the office. It brought it home. You could, with the broadband and the internet, you could potentially work out of office. So it brought that potential, but we didn't see that really happen in the 90s. The 2000s brought us a lot of things. So wireless technologies, for example, Wi-Fi was born in the late 90s, right? Including the mobile internet. We're talking about the second generation, third generation mobile wireless systems, which brought the data to the mobile phone, right? Previously, you couldn't check your email on the mobile phone, but then from that time onwards, you could. But the biggest thing, I suppose, that happened in 2000 also was cloud computing. So Amazon started this whole premise of providing IT services on the cloud in the early to mid 2000s, and was soon, followed by Microsoft and Google a bit later. All right, and Google popularized, online document collaboration, which prior to that was not something that popular. In the 2000s also, we saw web conferencing spring up. So I don't know how many of you still use Skype, but Skype was there. And WebEx, Cisco's WebEx also was something that was used quite a lot at that time. However,
I still use it. Skype is my favorite tool. But I feel very old now if you say you use Skype.
Exactly. But it's taken 20 years for web conferencing to become a norm. And, I don't know how many of you have Zoom fatigue now, but now everybody talks about Zoom as an adverb or adjective, right?
Yeah, true. Good point.
Yeah. All right. So that kind of brings us up to the present day. And what we see today is that, and I tried to kind of categorize the types of collaboration type tools that are in the market, just so that we have a rough idea of how they kind of, how they fit together. So if you look at the top, we have communication type tools, and that's the standard ones that we use, right? Things like a mobile phone, email, a lot of people use WhatsApp. Today we have the conferencing tools like the web conferencing, like Zoom, like Cisco WebEx, like Google Meet, right? So which kind of like has, because of the pandemic, has become something which a lot of us rely on nowadays. But there's also a third category, which I've not heard so much about, at least in the business world yet, is the coordination type tools. So if you look at the bottom right, the dark green there are tools like Basecamp, Asana, Trello, which are all technology-driven type tools. And they provide kind of like working lists for small project teams to work on, right? So you can share documents in Basecamp and things like that. And then right in the center, you have the big giants again, Google and Microsoft coming to the fore. So they took a different tack because they had online documents with the likes of Office 365 or Google Suite. They also pre-package all of this together with their video calls, with their messenger type chats and things like that, to be able to capture the market. It's very interesting because you see a name called Slack up there. Slack was a tool. It was actually started in 2013, and they were kind of like the new boys on the market, so to speak, because in 2013 you never had a communication called Slack, which was kind of a Twitter-like thing, but for the office. And you could use that together with Google to be able to produce collaboration type work, right? Last year, when Microsoft launched Teams a few years back, last year they surpassed Slack in terms of number of users. So they went from zero in 2017, I believe, to last year they had 13 million users on Microsoft Office and Teams. Plus this year, they've been pushing Microsoft Teams, which is the all-in thing. And they have, I think, over 40 million users. So it's quite amazing how at the speed at which they move. All right, we have a quick poll. So I'm not sure if Marika.
Yep, can see.
Just wanted to find out what people are using nowadays. So just find one of the categories which you could most identify with. Just pick one. Well, it's interesting to see. I think that a lot of people still use the basic kind of things. So the numbers are coming in, and most of the percentages are coming in item number one, which is we still use the standard, Zoom, Skype, and WhatsApp and things like that. A few people say they mix and match. So a lot of the G Suites and Office 365 and probably something else in that. All right. Just to talk about all of this, remote working actually has been happening in the technology world, and it has been something that was almost a given in the technology world, right? Right now, it's becoming the norm in the business world. But what really do you need to actually get everything working? The first up, and of course, is the right device. And I think it was very interesting for me to see Rohan presenting laptops, because no one who needs to be on the move is going to need a desktop, right? I mean, that's the obvious thing. But I don't know how many of you who actually have been working from home have had this shortage of devices. Not so much because you yourself don't have the device, but because the whole family needs it all of a sudden, because the kids are doing the education stuff, the parents are working at home, and all of a sudden you find you're short of devices. So that's also an interesting point to consider. The other thing, and Karamjit, you mentioned about your 500 megabits per second not working, is fast and stable connections. So even with so-called hundreds of megabits per second, I mean, it's not a given that you're going to have a smooth thing, because the connections run all the way from us to a local data center, then it goes all the way up to the cloud, and it depends on whether the platform itself has been catered for the demand, right? So you can have, I'm not sure how many of you have been using Google Meet, but it has shown a lot of issues in the last few weeks, I think. So that also shows its weakness, right? Then the other thing is something as simple as dead spots in your house. A lot of people will be using Wi-Fi. And it's amazing that all of a sudden people say, oh, I can't get on. And actually it's because they're working in a place where there's no coverage, right? So things like that. Simple things that can be solved very quickly if you know exactly what to look for, right? And the third thing I think is the right application or applications, right? I put three categories of applications or software applications, the communication type stuff, the conferencing and the coordination. Now, you don't just because everybody's using Zoom, you don't just jump into using Zoom. The point I'm trying to make is that you really need to know what you need, right? If you need to be able to get the team together, then yes, a video conference is good. But if you need to be able to share documents, things like Basecamp or share work list, Asana is good, and you have to understand that they all serve different needs. The fourth part, and I think is something that Sharmini mentioned, is know-how, right? Training. So it's not a given that if you're going to implement this as an office for your office in en masse, that everybody knows what to do and how to do it, because there are small nuances here and there, and it really depends on which software you're using and what you're trying to use it for, right? So those are the few things that need to be addressed when you implement policies. And the last but not least is actually policies and processes. Now, I think both Sharmini and Rohan also alluded to the policies and processes, at least in bigger companies. But I think it's also important to note, and as I go into my last slide, is that remote working is not just taking the office and putting it at home. It is actually something which is slightly different. And if you take a look at this, I took a page out of Jason Fried, who is the CEO and founder of Basecamp, is that you don't try to replicate exactly the office at home, because the tools and the software and all of the technology were built to work in a particular way, which is not exactly like, call everyone into a meeting room at 3 o'clock and have that meeting, right? You don't replicate that at home. What you do, the equivalent with that would be, you do a lot of preparation work beforehand. You craft the agenda, you create all the points, and you only meet if and when you need to clarify and confirm or discuss really nuanced issues. But most of the work can be done offline, and that takes that's the best benefit of having all your documents and working remotely. You can do a lot of things offline, and then only if and when you need to meet online to actually get the alignment if that's required.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you have time, I encourage you to have a look at that link that I provided. It provides a great opener into what is good about the software tools and how you can get the best benefit out of it.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot. It's nice to see the history of the tools and all that. Now, look, thank you to Ming Kit. I think she's got she or he has already got a great question there. And it's probably for Rohan and also for Sharmini. And the question is, how do you handle the top people in your organization, right? Who maybe have fixed mindsets and insist, interesting the word, things when the office is, maybe when we don't have this even revised MCU anymore. So how do you handle that? And you may already be experiencing that right now. So maybe let Sharmini handle that question first.
Okay. So the thing about, if you're talking specifically about KPMG, I think about 95% of our workforce actually go on projects. So we are already at client's place. So to a certain extent, we are already on this whole flexible working arrangement, whether we work in KPMG office itself or we're out at our client's place and so on. The partners in KPMG have been extremely supportive. Even now during this whole RMCO, we are working on about 30% workforce in the office, back in the office now. The remaining are actually still working from home or outside the, going back into our client's office and so on. So there is that element of the whole thing. As far as how do we handle management, we actually have had a lot of clients that have actually come to us and said, can I make this more permanent? How do I make this more permanent? And more importantly, how do I make this more effective and efficient moving forward? Because like as Rohan said, and even Andre also alluded to, the whole fact that at the end of the day, it was a rush job. Half my workforce didn't have laptops. Within 1.5 days, I had to sort out 9,000 people, 10,000 people, so what am I looking at now? KPMG, slightly better. Most of us have our laptops, so working from home was just meant I could work in my shorts and t-shirt as opposed to, having to wear my suit or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
That was that. we only had our back-end support staff. So like our secretaries didn't really have, they had desktops. So we had to sort them out. So it was a lot easier for us. But we had a lot of clients calling up and saying, how do I make this work? So it is something that people are looking forward to.
Absolutely, it's there. So Rohan, you're going to take the question about your top people maybe preferring to go back to the old normal.
Yeah. So I think, Karamjit, to answer Minkiat's question, right? I think the circumstances of this pandemic forced the situation on us, right? Because nobody could leave their home. It was literally stay at home, right? So you have to use technology to do meetings. So I remember my chairman calling me and saying, let's figure this out, because he said, I don't want to get stopped by the police and I'm telling him I'm going in for a meeting, right? I don't want to get arrested, right? This is my chairman telling me that, right? Because, so he said, let's figure out how to use technology. And actually it was okay. I was a bit concerned, right? How are these, because some of our directors are in their 60s, 70s, are they going to, adopt to this using technology? They're very used to face-to-face board meetings. But we ran all our board meetings, we ran all our management meetings virtually. I think the other factor is technology has improved so much. Everybody loves Zoom, right? Because Zoom was so user-friendly, the quality was really good. Everybody was using it. So I think the technology has also helped in terms of helping the adoption. But really, we didn't have a big issue because really nobody had a choice. They had to just do it. Yeah.
No, but the choice. But I think the question from Minkit is this: now that you have a higher choice to go back to the office, what if some of your top performers prefer to be in the office now? Will that be an issue for you?
Yeah, so I think, yes, we are going back to some physical meetings, but we also still do a lot of online meetings. So as I mentioned, we're taking it as 25% of our workforce will work from home. So if they're working from home, then you have to use some level of technology tools. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's a question about trust. So Nancy Lee is asked about how do leaders or managers gauge if the trust has increased or decreased from your staff? What are the symptoms? Because obviously trust is subjective. So, and both of you all have mentioned trust is a super key issue. How do you, of course you can do surveys, which is what you all have done. But I think that's what she's asking. How do you gauge? Do you strictly gauge on the survey, or do you use more subjective also?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I would say two things, right? First of all, when you're getting your employees to work from home, that itself requires trust, right?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
You really can't monitor them. You have to trust that they're going to be doing the work, and of course, you have to monitor it from the output, right? You can't. I mean, there is some software that can monitor what your employee is doing. And, we had that discussion, but, I didn't feel that was right. So we said, no, let's not do that, right? Let's trust our employees. I think the other issue is more if you're disengaged from your staff, how do you maintain that connection with the staff, right? I think that's a more relevant issue. And of course, we do that. We used to do, we use Agile. So we do 15-minute stand-ups. It's now, online stand-ups. So you have to, I think you do have to find that ways to still keep in touch with your teammates, your employees, and otherwise there's a risk of losing a bit of connection with the people.
Okay. So interesting. I think
add on. Sorry, I just wanted to add on to what Rohan is saying. Like if you're talking about trust, I think one of the key here would be how did you treat your people before MCO happened? So if you had that level of trust already with your team members, then it's easier for you to say, okay, now that I can't see you on a daily basis, how do we then operate? But then if you already had that disconnect at the start, it becomes a lot more difficult for you to monitor all these things, So think about what it was before and how you're going to do it moving forward. I think that becomes...
Yeah, I also like that. I mean, I totally support it. And it's at the end of the day, it's the relationship thing, right? If you only have that good relationship, then it's just something that continues. But I mean, in terms of a systematic way, I mean, everything should be objective based. You know, did you or did you not produce that work, and did you do it on time and it's of quality? And if you have all those metrics clear in mind, then it's probably much easier to build that trust also when people are working away from the office.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's interesting. This is, we are there's a term that you're going to start hearing more, that we are now in the low touch economy. Yeah, because you want to reduce the touch points, but yet it increases the pressure at the stage, right? Because you're a leader, and to even maybe show more empathy also, I think. So it's interesting to see whether there are companies like yours, both of yours, you will help to retrain your middle layer in terms of their communication skills, in terms of the empathy remotely, right? That's going to be quite a challenge and I asked that because it's a good question by I think Menkid again, which is there are some managers who are control freaks. So any recommendations, from all three of you on how do you deal with a manager who's who he or she is such a person that.
So throughout this 4 months, I've had all three spectrums actually. I've had top management come to me and say, I don't know what my people are doing. How do I engage that? And then I've got middle management that say, I have to have calls at 8 o'clock every night because I don't trust my people or I don't know what they're doing. I've asked them for something and they're not giving it to me. So what do I do? And then you've got the juniors who call me up, and I've got a lot of nieces and nephews who just started working. So I've got nieces and nephews calling me up and saying, Auntie Sharmini, I have calls at 10 o'clock at night. My manager has no respect for my privacy. So it's all across. Everyone is facing it. So what do you do then to make sure that level of, so it goes back to trust. There's no two ways about it. I have to trust you. You have to trust me. I have to respect you that your working hours, or I will only call you from, say, 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock or whatever it is. 8 o'clock, you go do whatever you want, but please continue working and make sure the deadlines are met.
Yeah.
So that becomes key.
I still want to add one other thing.
Go ahead.
I just said, I used to run my own company, and the thing I put that work was always the fact that it was not that you were letting you as a manager down. It was more the fact that you were, letting their own peers down. Like if you didn't, and Rohan, I don't know, you have your IT teams, right? I mean, if somebody didn't write the code or something, somebody else at the end of the day is going to be, I can't do my work, right? So I think that team spirit thing is also a very important component.
I mean, just to add, I think there are different roles and how you can, track productivity, right? So, for example, if you are, for example, in operations and you're supposed to process, 50 invoices a day, it's very easy to monitor whether you or not.
True.
If you are in tech, maybe it's you can monitor it in terms of software developed, in terms of what is produced. But we also have branch tellers, and the reality is there was nothing for the branch teller to do at home, because if the branch was shut, there's nothing they can do. So we got them to do online learning, and we have to accept that. That is the reality. So I think there are certain roles that you can track productivity, and there are certain roles you have to trust people, and there's certain roles you have to accept. In this kind of situation, people will not be productive.
So this, like I said, I think this is new and everybody's learning. So there's no right and wrong. We're just trying to find the right balance for all of ourselves, and the whole world is going through it. So I don't think anyone has to worry about whether they're doing it right or wrong, as long as you remain. And I heard the word nimble and open-minded. And the thing is, there's no choice. You have to do this. And I think Rohan, you were saying that some of your staff were saying that that there should be respect for the time where maybe it's like they feel it's family time. And I feel like in a time like this where you see your jobs become even more precious, I think your job is your bonus. I had an ex-boss who used to say it, and used to annoy all of us. What do you mean your job? Our job is our bonus, but almost literally it is true now. So if you feel that your time, if you feel that your time is being encroached, I think you got to just deal with that.
No, I was going to say, Karamjit, I think you're absolutely right? Because you may complain you're working longer hours, but think about the people that lost their jobs, right? They didn't even have a job. How many percent of the population didn't even have a job, right? So I think sometimes people just have to be realized, just have to go with the, it's a very difficult time for everyone, right? It's
true. Yeah, absolutely. It is difficult. I think that's a good point. And when you talk about difficult, I think one of our listeners or watchers, Mike Wong, has been raving about the quality of connectivity in the country or so. And frankly, I think Malaysia we rank quite decently in terms of broadband connectivity and speed. It's just for this particular stream now, I think the quality has not been good. Like I said, this is the 7th one I'm doing. Correct. No, but and hey, Mike is saying that how do you compete with kids who are online, right? Gamers and streamers. So you're right. All those kids, especially those who are in universities who are at home, they're online all the time. So you're right. The bandwidth is work bandwidth is competing with leisure bandwidth. And again, we just got to figure it out. So personally for me now, although I've got a 500 meg line, we just ordered the Wi-Fi mesh from Unify. So I'm waiting for the 2 extenders to come, and hopefully then my kids won't complain so much. Again, we're adapting, right? So for me, saying 500 meg, you should be enough, don't complain. No, to them, it's not good enough. And I'm realizing it today, it's not good enough actually also.
Yeah. But, you think about the students doing online learning, right? But it's also, if you think about a lower income household, if they don't have a laptop, they don't have an iPad, maybe they're lucky if they have a mobile phone, they have to do it. They're learning on a small mobile phone, internet quality. So this is also the other aspect about,
I think the main medium. It's tough. Everybody's, and by the way, I suspect that this conversation, even the people who are listening, is a lot of us who are white collar workers, because I think the situation for blue collar workers will be totally different. And I think you mentioned your frontliners at the bank tellers, right? So I don't know in industry lingo whether bank tellers are considered blue collar workers, but your job depends on you physically being somewhere to do it. And then all the technology in the world can only help so little then, correct, Sharmini also? And this disruption caused by COVID is really increasing the urgency and the importance of technology as a tool to be used, but only up to a certain level.
Yeah.
I suppose I just want to put forward whether it is also maybe a wake-up call for us, because if you think about it, if you project far into the future, technology is going to be even more pervasive. So what happens to a bank teller or if you're a service industry? Should they already be retrained to do other things? It is. Technology is going to be here, right? And it's just going to grow.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
I just want to add to that. I think it was about 10 or 15 years ago. My team and I, we actually went into one of the states here in Malaysia, and we did a study on their manpower. We looked at 4 different industries. And one of the industries actually said they were actually going to reduce their manpower by about 20 or 25% because of automation.
That's a lot.
So while some of the others were going to grow and actually say they needed more people, there was one particular industry that actually said, I'm not going to need as many people in the future. So, and that's exactly what we're finding out now, 15 years down the road. Yes, it's because of COVID that we're learning the hard way, but the reality is you are at some point going to have to automate, going to have to say, okay, let the machines handle certain things, let the people handle certain things, and what is that mix at the end of the day.
Okay. I think that Norma here has got an interesting, I think it's a tough question. So is there a way to make it equitable for all, which means those who've got no choice with work from home versus those who have a choice? So it's and I think even what's fair so is being it's the definition of what's fair so is going to change, right? Because so how do you make it equitable? That's a tough one to answer, I think.
Yeah. I think from what I've seen, not just within KPMG but also from some of our clients, it really depends on what you do. if we're using RHB Rohan as an example, there are certain people that whether you want to or not, you cannot work from home. You have to go into the bank, and each organization, each industry, you are going to find some that can work from home and some that just don't have the choice. So what do you do with them?
Yeah.
So
I think there was
equitability is
Yeah, I think there was an article yesterday by Khazanah Research Institute that showed basically the people that benefit from work from home are those who have education, higher education, work in tech, banking, those kind of industries, right? But if you're, for
consulting,
example, consulting. But if you're in, some of the lower level blue-collar workers, you're doing physical jobs. There's, unfortunately, there's, very little options, right? So we still have that reality, unfortunately, in Malaysia.
It's true.
But to that point,
Malaysia, it's global.
Global, yeah. But to Andre's point, it will shift certain things, right? So, for example, in where we saw our branch transactions fell, but our digital transactions went up 22%. So that tells you there's going to be a shift, and I'm sure there's going to be a shift to more online learning and online gaming and online commerce, e-commerce, and all that. The economy will shift a bit as you go.
Yeah.
Rohan,
totally. It's shifting.
Rohan, just out of interest, there's a lot of new, come from the older groups, or elderly realizing, oh no, I can't take money out of my ATM, I should go online. Did you have that? Did you have more registrations from the older group?
We did actually. Even though we were not opening new accounts, we did find a lot of people were going online, even on the older generation. Interestingly, we actually saw less people handling cash and more people using e-wallets or digital payments also, because maybe people were a bit afraid to use cash because of this COVID. So these are interesting things. But whether it's going to be long-term or not, we're not sure.
So this example of how things are changing so far, they're doing digital, using e-wallet was dangerous, risky. Now it's gone from using. So, okay, with that, I think Prem, it looks like Prem is about to jump back in, and I want, because it's already 6 o'clock. So I think Prem wants to put together his closing comments now. I'm gonna switch off my video so that Prem gets center stage. So we're gonna have just closing remarks from Prem now, and I think if the only thing I could say is that we're all in this together on a global level, trying to figure out what's best. But definitely the onus is on everyone to adapt to the new reality, right? And we got to be more efficient, more productive, no matter what you say. So Prem, if you're going to switch on your video, I'm not sure you're just going to use audio. I will switch off my camera now and let you have the concluding remarks.
Thanks. Hi everybody. For some reason my video doesn't seem to be coming on, but I think thank you so much to all our speakers, Sharmini, Rohan, Andre. Very nice to hear the remarks, and also, of course, Karamjit. I think it's very interesting to see how work is evolving, and we're doing so much more from work from home. I'm a big fan of people coming to office and working together as a team, so that we can see each other, we can have a chat, we can go for lunch together. So I suppose as we drive to work from home, we should also allow space for us to work as teams, see each other and support each other beyond just work. But I think it's been a really good discussion, and it'll be nice to see how work will change over the next 6 months. So thank you so much to our sponsors, KPMG, as well as our partners who have organized this together with us, Digital News Asia, Malaysia KiniEvents, and ScaleUp Malaysia, and a big thanks to our speakers. And thank you, audience, for joining us. Bye for now.